I was telling Aditi I just missed TSI. So I was just excited to be with you all and hopefully have something helpful to share. Let's see, where do I start? So I made a little presentation because I was thinking if I'm taking everyone's time, I might as well let it be kind of good. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see how I do that. Okay. Can you guys see this? Oh, wait, let's make this. I'm going to introduce myself. But hey, everyone, I'm Rukmini, and I know a lot of faces on here, but a lot I don't know. So at some point, I want you to show me your faces so I don't feel like I'm alone here talking to myself and Mukunda and Shruti. When I talked to Aditi, she sent me the topic for today was finding the balance between self-care and productivity. And I think I had to tell Aditi like 5 times, like, wait, what's the question? Because I didn't fully understand it. And I think it's because this term self-care is just thrown around a lot. And I was like, wait, what kind of self-care? Like spiritual self-care, emotional? Like, what does that mean? So I'm going to do my best to talk about what I can offer about self-care. And I'm just really going to open it up to have a cool dialogue with all of you because I'm more interested in that and just hearing about how everyone is doing, what's coming up for you emotionally, what's coming up with you when you think about how to care for yourself and what's productivity. And yeah, just talk about that. Okay, one second, just getting used to figuring out how to see comments that are coming up. Okay, I will see the questions later. Okay, cool. If anyone has like audio and they can just tell me like they hear me, they see me, everything's good, I'm not alone in my little Zoom chat, that would be reassuring, and then I'll keep going.
We're with you. We can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yay. All right. Thank you guys. So, okay, that's me. Yes. Oh, also, besides what Aditi said, I lived at the Bhakti Center. Well, I still live at the Bhakti Center the last 3-4 years. So if any of you have come to New York, maybe you've seen me there. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator by accident because I kept posting on Instagram and that's what Instagram calls me. So, and I'm just really passionate about talking about emotions, emotional wellness. I love TSI. I love Devotees. I love being with like other youth and just talking about real stuff, like what we're all going through. So again, hopefully at the end of this, we can have a real rich dialogue because I want to hear how everyone's doing. Okay, I stuck a lot of drawings in here because just images are helpful. So before we talk about self-care and before we talk about productivity, let's talk about the context, the landscape of where we're at, which is this really interesting, crazy, never before happened season called COVID. Everyone is familiar with this, and here's some feelings. I don't know if you guys have seen this drawing before, but it just paints a picture that we are living in a time where normalcy is kind of thrown out the window. Planning is not really happening. We are being confronted with the challenge of being alone with ourselves or being alone with loved ones, which is actually really difficult and can bring up a lot of stuff. We're looking at connection very differently in our lives. Human connection looks very different. Like right now, we're all connected with each other and it's all virtual and digital. And that's something we have to adapt to and get used to. And a big one is that time just kind of seems to have paused. And it seems like we've entered this big pause, and that can be really scary because it's just stopped. A lot of what we thought we were going to be doing right now in May of 2020 is probably not what we're doing. It can also be exciting because there's a new opportunity for what we want to do in our life. So I can't see the comments, but you guys can comment or tell me if this seems accurate to how you're feeling or any other feelings that you have that's not on this. I'd like to know just to get a sense again how we're doing. But this is just painting the picture. This is where we're at, guys. This is the season we are living in. Here's a few other images, just throwing on some color. I like to talk about emotions and our own emotional forecast, meaning that, I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health or just like the mind, because that's what I'm particularly interested in. And I think it has to do with self-care. And then again, we'll open it up. So Yeah, some days are sunny, stormy, cloudy. We're going to be going through all of this during this time and really during any time, but I'm speaking from my own experience, how interesting it is to be physically not moving and physically in the same place, but internally feeling a lot of ups and downs. And it's really healthy to be able to acknowledge and see that. It's also scary because we keep ourselves distracted so we don't have to see this. We keep ourselves traveling and going to even spiritual programs, and there could be kirtan melas and sadhu sangha going on right now, but I'm not there, and I'm just here with my mind. So that brings up a lot of stuff. On the right, we see this little image. What stops me from seeing clearly? A lot. My insecurities, my desperation to hold on to my plans, the past, all of my self-limiting beliefs, my constant need of validation, and fear of the uncertainty. There's probably hundreds more we can put that stops me from seeing clearly the situation that we're in, that I'm in, but here's a few of them. Let me know if this relates. Okay, so jumping into this topic, self-care. Let me know what self-care means to you. I can say honestly, when I hear that term, I'm like, what does that mean? This term self-care has been thrown out a lot. And sometimes it can be really, like monetized, in the sense of self-care means getting a spa treatment or taking care of yourself. It almost seems a little material. It could seem selfish. Like self-care means not caring for others, caring for yourself. But there is actually something really deep and true about self-care, which is what I want to get down to today. Okay, so I put this together. This is a definition I literally came up with on the spot, but kind of rings a bell. Self-care, taking responsibility for your own sustained happiness. It's about self-nourishment. It's about filling yourself up so you can give to others. And it's not selfish, it's actually necessary. So this word responsibility is kind of intense, but it's so important. It means that when we say I need self-care, that means I'm going to take responsibility for finding my own happiness, and sustained happiness, something that could be going long-term. So maybe we'll go a little bit into this. I have my little drawing of of something good pouring into you so you can pour into someone else. So I also believe self-care is nourishing yourself with things that sustain you, with love, with wisdom, with connection to nature, with God, with Krishna, with Sangha or community. Receiving all of this is a form of self-care. And yeah, I have a little bit more here, that it's really about learning to accept yourself as you are right now. We hear that you are enough, cliche, probably so much that it's lost its meaning. But you are enough. I mean, it's grounded in our own spiritual understanding of who are we? We're spirit souls, Satchit Anandas. When we come to that place of a feeling that who I am in this moment is enough, then we can really begin to care for ourselves. It's about finding what nourishes you. Again, self-care, we can think, okay, binging on Netflix for 7 hours, that feels good, so I'm caring for myself. I mean, sometimes we might need a little Netflix break, but is that really nourishing yourself? Like after that binge on Never Have I Ever or whatever you're watching, like, do you really feel that much better about yourself? So again, it's finding like what will sustain you. Maybe just developing better habits is what's going to sustain you. Again, it starts with treating yourself with respect. So caring for yourself, eating well, exercising well, taking care of your body, all these things that really nourish yourself and respect yourself is what's going to help you to respect others. Have my little drawing here, my little dude, the 2 types of confidence. I thought this kind of related. Finding your self-value from the world or from others. For me, this image just shows that to really care for ourselves, we have to love ourselves. We don't, how much can we depend on the world to give us that love? We have to find it for ourselves. I'm going through a lot of big topics, so this might also seem idealistic too. So I'm just going to note that down. You know, this idea like to love yourself might just be like way too many steps down. Like, where do we even begin with that journey? But I'm just going to paint these topics, and again, we can talk about it. Okay. Yes. So that was my definition of self-care, was taking responsibility for your own happiness. And yeah, what does that look like? Let's see. Self-care is actually self-nourishment. And it comes down to asking, what am I looking to nurture? This presentation is not a reason for me to just showcase my art. I just thought visuals help. So here we go. But yeah, true nourishment, I think, is when you're growing something, like nurturing something. And that just helps because, again, we're trying to navigate this time where we're wondering, how can I care for myself better? And if we have these habits that aren't really nurturing ourselves, like eating junk food or watching tons of Netflix, or not getting down on Netflix, but I'm just saying these like immediate immediate pleasure doses is what I'm saying. Eating something that'll just immediately make you feel good, or watching something, or but it's not really sustaining something, because what you're doing is you're almost like numbing yourself out. And we all have habits where we do this, where we think it's self-care, but you're just distracting yourself. Like for me to scroll on Instagram for like 45 minutes, an hour, isn't really self-care. It's actually just distracting my mind because I'm too uncomfortable to sit with my own thoughts. So it's a fine balance of doing something that's really nourishing, or doing something that's just distracting you from yourself. So I think it comes to being a little honest with ourselves and finding that balance. Like sometimes watching a movie is nourishing, but sometimes it's just you're numbing yourself out. And how much do you want to do that? And I guess that's the point of what I'm trying to say. There's so many ways to care for ourselves, but we have to be really honest. Like, is this really caring for me, or am I running away from something? So that's something to think about. Something important for me also is when doing something in life, I just ask, like, am I doing this because I want to do it, or am I doing this because I'm running away from something else? Okay. And just throwing this pro tip. Before you learn to do, you have to learn to be. I think, Aditi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned, kind of self-care versus productivity. And I think productivity is like, I got to be the achiever. During this time, I'm going to work out like this, and I'm going to be so productive and achieve all my goals and my task list. And that's awesome. But before we can get to that place, we have to be in a place of like being with ourselves. Otherwise, although it's good to be productive, again, it comes to that place like, is that productivity a distraction? Like, are we running away from something? And maybe this time of COVID is forcing us to be with ourselves. So that's just something important to see, that being with ourselves can actually be a lot more scary than doing things, because we're so used to doing things. But what does it look like to stop doing? Right now we're not in school, like maybe we're working from home, where I don't know everyone's situation, you can tell me later, but for myself, I'm used to being in New York and having my plan list, and I had my summer plans, and I'm not doing any of it. So what am I doing? I feel really uncomfortable even telling people what I'm doing, because I feel like I'm not doing anything. I'm at home at my parents' place for the last 2 months. But you know what? It's good to be in this place, because we can finally be with ourselves, learn to be with ourselves. And maybe that's the lesson of this time. Maybe that's the lesson we have to learn to sit with. And again, just another little image. I don't know if you guys like these images, but I put it here. The journey of from doing to being. Just a little story that I wrote. I used to think that my value came from doing, until one day I suddenly had to stop. My world began to shrink until I found it could only fit myself. I was forced to sit with my shadows, until eventually I realized my value came from being. So it just kind of illustrates this point of how uncomfortable it can be to stop doing, because we're used to being productive, that's when we're valuable. But being in this place of being is also very important. I'm going to just keep going through these slides, but if anyone wants to stop me at some point, because again, I feel like I'm talking to my computer, that would be great. And again, I feel like I'm throwing a lot of big concepts. Hopefully it's making sense, and hopefully they're just discussion points, talking about self-care, talking about being okay, not doing. These are a few topics that I'm bringing up right now, and we can go over it later. Oh, okay. So this slide is examples of how to be. Maybe there's more, but just off the top of my head, I wrote, take time in nature, take conscious time away from your phone. Notice your mental health. There are ways to notice it, and it starts with just noticing the mental chatter. Actually, if you're noticing your mind telling you stuff like you should be doing this or you should be doing that, like, okay, where is that coming from? It's hard to notice what your mind, the mental chatter, because we're so distracted. So again, stopping distraction is the first step to noticing what is it that my mind is so full of right now that I can learn to empty. Acknowledge your emotions is also good. Once you notice what your mind is saying, acknowledge your heart. Like, am I disappointed? Am I sad? Am I grieving? Like, maybe I'm feeling grief right now. And grief could be just coming from the fact that life is not what it was 2 months ago. This is another big one. Ask yourself what you're avoiding. A scary one, so you don't have to jump into that if that's too uncomfortable, but at some point, maybe you can tiptoe into that question. Breathing consciously, super simple, super powerful way to tap into the present. I like this one. Allow yourself to be bored, really. It's like crazy. It's not even possible these days to be bored. We have so many devices and things to look at, but I think boredom is a nice gateway to, like, again, just being with yourself. So yeah, boredom is wildly underrated. And okay, these are, once you've practiced ways of being, self-care of being, here's things that you could be doing that I feel examples that could be nourishing for yourself. So try a new hobby. It's like the perfect time to pick up a new hobby, really. Wake up 15 minutes earlier, just baby steps. Move your body. I totally failed at that today. I think I've been in front of my computer all day, but it's important. Whether it's taking a walk or doing some kind of little exercise, calling a friend who you feel is close to you, listening to a good podcast, like nourishing your intellect in some way. Daily journaling or morning pages are great ways to these are just things that you can do that really nourish you. And when I say nourish, I mean they connect deeper in the heart and in the mind, and it's sustained. It's not just like a quick fix, like, okay, let me just do this or eat that or binge on that. Those are like quick fixes that can be kind of like sense gratification that doesn't last very long. Or there's other nourishing ways we can practice self-care. Over here in the middle, I wrote connect with Krishna in a personal way. More can be said on that, but I guess I just meant that, approaching your spiritual life in a more personal way, meaning finding something, in your spiritual life that you actually connect with, whether it's kirtan and you're finding a way to do a little kirtan. Maybe you're reading a bhajan book or something, you always wanted to read the Gita. This is a way to maybe do chapter a day. Chad, if anyone's heard, where you like read a verse, read all the verses of the Gita. Just different things. Maybe it's cooking or dressing the deities. So that's something we can talk about. But I think it's really nourishing, again, when we choose to connect with Krishna in a way that inspires us, rather than like, okay, I have to chant my 4 rounds, and we do that. This is a time that we can take time to explore things that are good for us, that are connecting with us in helpful ways. So Yay, time for Q&A. Yeah, I would love to open it up now. I'm gonna stop sharing because, gosh, there's 37 people on here. And I'm excited to hear from everyone. There's a lot of friends here, a lot of people I don't know. To be honest, I feel like I was just talking to my computer. It's weird to give like a presentation and not have people around. So I don't know if I went through that too fast or not fast enough. Let me know what you think. And yeah, let's just start talking.
So we actually have a few questions on our anonymous form, but if people want to start turning on their cameras,
Please, I want to see your faces. Give me your darshan.
Start like turning on your cameras, and if you do have questions, you're welcome to just unmute and ask or put them in the chat. Yeah. Okay, so one of the first questions we got was, how do we stop distractions clouding our minds and heart?
How do we stop distractions from clouding our mind and our heart? That's a good question. I wish I had a little bit more context of this person. How do we stop distractions from clouding? I guess distractions are just inevitable, like it's just part of life, but it really just comes down to the choice, and it comes down to noticing. Like we don't notice that we're distracting ourselves constantly. We forget that just on our phones, we're just constantly scrolling. And then after 30 minutes of being on our phone, we're like, whoa, I am super distracted. So I would just say, just keep a practice of noticing. I'll just say that for now. Maybe if that question comes back, because I might have to know a little bit more to answer more specifically.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the other questions we got was, how do you integrate personal compassion, sympathy, and consideration for yourself? Oh, sorry, I just clicked off. How do you integrate personal compassion, sympathy, and consideration for yourself when you're not doing your best? Like, it's easy to be compassionate for others, but I have a hard time finding love for myself.
Oh man, that's such a good question. And like, I can relate with that. Kind of heartbreaking. Yeah, man, it's true. Like we can have a lot of compassion for others. We can say like, oh, there, you're doing your best. Like whoever asks this question, I want to be like, there, you're doing your best. I don't even know who it is, but it comes naturally. But like we're our own worst critics. We're so hard on ourselves. And I think it's because we determine our value as a person from what we do and what we achieve. And that's something we've learned. That's something that's in us. It's something our culture tells us. So it's really hard because when we're not achieving, and like this question said, we're not doing enough, we feel really like crappy about ourselves. We feel like I don't deserve to be loved. I don't deserve to like be the recipient of love because I didn't do what I should have done. And so the whole point really um, of cultivating that self-love and self-compassion is to realize that your value isn't determined by what you do, and that you are absolutely valuable just by your existence. And that's completely true. It's true even in our spiritual tradition. Coming back to that identity of being a spirit soul, it's infinitely valuable. And when we lose touch with that identity and we start identifying as like, oh, I'm Rukmini, I'm 27 years old, I should have my career together and this and money and that, and like, I don't, therefore I suck. That could be really bad because no one, who's judging me by that? No one, just me. And it's all just stuff I've learned and this whole like inner critic in my mind. And that can be so dangerous, and it's such unnecessary suffering. In this world, there's necessary suffering and a lot of unnecessary suffering that we put ourselves through. So I would just tell that person to be gentle on yourself and really try to find ways that determine, your lovability, not ways, but coming into that place of accepting yourself just for who you are. And it's so much easier said than done, but at least recognize that you're giving value to yourself based on what you're achieving. And that's not what gives you value.
All right. Thanks for that. It was really nice. How do you not let other people and their lives, especially on media, affect you in the way you live yours?
Wow, that's a good one. I guess they're saying that, wait, can you say that again? How do you not let people affect your life, especially like on social media and stuff like that? Yeah. I guess the answer to this is boundaries. I mean, this goes for whether it's online or not. Just having really strong boundaries is really important, because our mental health, our emotional health, our full well-being is determined by who we let into our circle. And we just have to be careful with that. Yeah, I'd be curious also if we can open the discussion to just like what we go through in our own devotional communities and devotional lives. Like, for example, being in a temple community, we feel like, okay, everyone's a devotee, I have to let everyone into my life. Like, otherwise I'm like doing Vaishnava Prada or something. Not true. Respect all devotees for sure, but there are still very important to keep boundaries, because some people you just relate with, some people, they could be nice people, but still toxic for you. It happens. And so just being able to determine like really who you want to let in and not is important. And also, yeah, being able to do that as a devotee. I would love to hear more from people who experience that in their own devotee communities, because that's just really important. And again, I think we get confused with that, like, oh, because I'm a devotee and she's a devotee, we should all be friends. Like, be respectful, be friends, but like, you will gain more respect and self-respect by putting boundaries. And that goes on social media too, like who you let in and who you don't.
Okay. And here's another. How do you do nothing and notice what your head is saying without it turning into a cycle of self-pity and negativity?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm not like a mindful meditation master, even like close to that. So I can't really give like the best answers, but just from my own understanding, yeah, doing nothing is really hard. Um, there's different kinds of meditations out there. You're never really doing anything, whether you're focusing on your breath or something else. But since we're all in a sangha of devotees, we practice japa, we practice connecting with Krishna, kirtan, and I guess in those practices, you can still be, you can still kind of let go of thoughts. But what I would say is really important is that you hold on to an anchor, and our anchor is Krishna, and you hold on to the holy name. And I guess that's the process of kind of surrender in a way. That's just what comes up for me. Like, if you're trying to notice what's coming up, and you just get like full on hit with all your self-pitying thoughts or really intense stuff, you have to seek shelter. And I think we're really lucky and really fortunate to be in a tradition where we have bhakti and we have Krishna, and we can hold on to Krishna in a personal way, and we can pray. And I would just say, I mean, I know it's a generic answer, but when we're hit by that, we have to seek shelter. And again, we're so lucky to have a personal loving God. Even if we haven't really felt like we've developed that relationship, we can always kind of turn in prayer, and it's a real refuge. It's something that's really helpful.
Yeah, I relate to that.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is, you had mentioned necessary sufferings. What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
What do
good
you mean
point.
by that? What are some necessary sufferings we have, and how can you have a positive outlook on it?
Yeah, I wish I could speak more on this. I heard this from friends and Navinoni, some of you know them, they're amazingly brilliant. And they quoted this from Richard Rohr, who is another super brilliant Christian theologian or something. He wrote this book, Falling Upwards, which is about spiritual maturity. I haven't really read the book. I wish it was, then I could tell you more. But from my understanding of necessary suffering and unnecessary suffering, it's interesting because basically there's always going to be necessary suffering, in the sense that we're born, there's going to be diseases, we're going to get old, and we're going to die. Those are for sure necessary sufferings. And there's all kinds in between. The sufferings are caused by our mind, in relationships, heartbreak, like disappointment and failure. That's all there. So that's all necessary. Now, unnecessary, I feel, and this is what I heard a little bit from Rasanath, and now that this person asked, I want to research it more, is like what we do to make it worse than it has to be. For example, like say you're fighting with your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend or something. There's always going to be some conflict, but if we know how to handle that properly, we can go through it a little bit more gracefully. But the unnecessary suffering is when we're acting from the ego and we're saying, no, it has to be my way, and it just escalates. So I guess it's all these things in life that when we bring our ego into it and we don't really surrender to just accepting, okay, the world kind of sucks. It is painful. Like, look at what's happening with COVID. Those are all necessary. Those are things that are happening in the world. But unnecessary is when we bring our ego into it and we make it worse than it has to be. I wish I had a more specific example, but hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of like in a marriage, there's going to be stuff is going to be hard, but it doesn't have to be that hard. I mean, it might happen because I brought my intense ego or because I couldn't surrender to a certain situation. That's the added suffering that we bring and that we didn't have to bring. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you work with feelings of being scared and pressured of the unclear future and not knowing what's to come and how to deal with it?
Oh man, yeah. Uncertainty is like the scariest thing ever, and yet it's like the only certainty of our world, if that makes sense. Like, everyone hates uncertainty. We want certainty, but uncertainty and unpredictability is the nature of this world. And it's like the one thing that we can count on that will keep happening are states of uncertainty. So I would say for personally, I hate uncertainty. I hate not knowing. I hate is strong, but I dislike not knowing how much longer I'll be in Florida, if I'll ever be able to go back to New York, what I'll be doing with my life after. It's like very uncomfortable, and it's really uncomfortable because it forces me to be dependent. I think demanding certainty is a way of kind of being the controller in this world. If we always say, you're not the enjoyer, you're not the controller. It's something we hear often in Bhagavatam class and everywhere. I'm like, okay, I get it. But I don't think we realize how deep rooted that sense of wanting to be the controller is. And for me, in a subtle way, it comes down to demanding certainty. I've seen it even like in praying to Krishna. I'm like, Krishna, it has to happen this way and find me this and this in my life. And I want to be married. I want to be this. And like, I'm thinking like, who am I to demand Krishna of certainty when that's the nature of this world? So I guess in saying that, I want to just tell this person, like, one, it's natural to want certainty, and it's very natural to be scared of uncertainty. But it's helpful when you just take steps to accept that that's the way the world is rather than fighting against it. Like, we're all forced to surrender right now during COVID in a way to the uncertainty. Like, we're just forced to. And if we fight against that, we create tension. No, I want it my way, I want it my way. That's kind of the unnecessary suffering. It's like, you're not going to have it your way, and you're wearing yourself out just demanding that it should be. So in some way, that forced surrender is kind of necessary. And I would just say, you kind of have to soften into the uncertainty, if that makes sense. You have to kind of, once you start accepting that life is uncertain, you just change your frame. Instead of saying it has to happen this way, say like, okay, okay, take a step back. When we feel that Krishna is on our side and we feel like Krishna is really providing for us a wonderful life, the uncertainty becomes like an exciting adventure. Instead of being scared and feeling like, oh, Krishna is always against me, or the universe is against me, nothing's happening my way, you're always going to feel like that, closed and shrunken. But if you feel like Krishna is my well-wisher, he's my friend, he's always taking care of me my whole life, and he is the uncertainty, then you feel like, wow, the uncertainty can be my friend. Like, okay, I'm not meant to know everything. I'm a small little jiva. Like, what do I know? But uncertainty, when you see it from that approach, it becomes a little bit more exciting. And even for myself, like the first month of COVID, I was kind of super sucky for me. I just felt so out of sorts and so like out of control of my own life, and really confused what I wanted to do and what was my future. And still it sucks. But I feel a little bit more like I've softened into it, and I feel a little bit more like what's happening is happening. And if I see that Krishna's behind it all and he's my friend and well-wisher, then it can become more like an exciting game. Like, what is he unfolding now for me? And just changing that perspective is really helpful.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Thanks.
How can we stop constantly stressing about what other people think about us or looking for others' approval?
Yeah, that's super hard. In some ways, it might just kind of always be there, because that's like our conditioned nature, is that we're constantly seeking validation from others, and we're so much, yeah, so much of our self-value and confidence comes from others. But I think to stop doing that, it won't happen overnight, but it's just, um, it's like a series of changing the way we value ourselves, you know, to take a step back from that and ask, like, why am I so needy of validation? um, and to start, I guess, the process of self-love, self-care, to give ourselves what we're looking for. Yeah, can you say that question one more time? I don't know if I answered it properly.
They asked, how can we stop constantly stressing about what other people think about us and looking for others' approval?
Yeah, yeah. How can we stop looking for other people's approval? Yeah, I guess in one way, to be honest, it won't really ever go away, but we can make steps towards doing the towards giving ourselves that approval, towards finding ways to really nourish ourselves, to take care of ourselves, um, which sounds very vague. Again, like, I wish I could talk to whoever's answering these questions, because it's more of a dialogue. It's more like, you know, some practical things we can do. It can even be writing our feelings, journaling. There's many things we can do, coming in touch with a hobby or an activity that gives us joy, doing things that like give us our own sense of confidence, things like that. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, the next one is, how do we deal with the fear of rejection from a significant other or from people around you?
Fear of rejection. Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, a lot of these questions they're very, very good questions, but they're also similar. It's like, okay, like, how do we, you know, deal with failure or rejection or hurt or comparison? And I guess there's no like easy answer. You can't just kind of deal with it, but it's more of coming from a place of acceptance, um, and acceptance in the sense of like, okay, this fear is coming up. The fear is not a bad thing. Like, we all have fears. It's like, it's kind of like that inner child in us that's looking to be secure and taken care of, and especially to be rejected by a significant other is super painful. And I would just say, like, when that fear is coming up, acknowledge it, see that it's there, give it some love. I mean, this might sound super woo-woo to some people, or like dumb, but it's kind of true. Like, we have like an inner child there, and instead of pushing it down and be like, oh, you're dumb, or like, you messed up this relationship and that's why they're rejecting you, just kind of be like, okay, like, I hear you, Rukmini. I hear, you know, like, you're scared right now. That's okay. You know, we're going to get through this. It's going to be okay. So sometimes that reassurance that at least we can give ourselves helps us feel a little bit more courageous on the other side. Um, and so whenever that rejection does come, we can handle it a bit better, because sometimes it's just the fear of rejection that can make us super dismissive, or that can make the whole situation worse. You know, we can be really deflective or whatever is coming up. Yeah, hopefully that helps. And if anyone feels like they want to ask something more specific, it can be nice, because then I can answer more specifically. I feel like I'm giving general answers.
I think Mukunda actually has a question if you want to come
Yay!
on and say something.
Sorry,
Please.
my thing is to just speak once at every gathering so that
Okay.
a share of voices here. I was trying to think how to word this question, but basically, I liked first of all that you were questioning what self-help means,
Mm,
because it is unclear, you know,
yeah.
and in in one, like you said, I like how you said that sometimes the term is monetized, because when we talk about self-help, you know, sometimes it's just like, just do what makes you feel good.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And it's like, okay, that's not really good, but
Yeah, for sure. Like, what do
yeah,
you have, an addiction or something?
exactly. And so, I mean, my question is, when we're talking about self-help, there's a nice succinct saying by Sridhar Maharaj, Prabhupada's godbrother. He
Mm,
says elimination. He's talking about, when he's talking about spiritual growth, he says it takes elimination and new acceptance. So it means
mm,
you know, cutting down basically what you don't want and bringing into your life what you do want. And but that can be very uncomfortable. obviously.
Yeah.
So, and I think naturally we understand that growth, I think we all understand that in order to grow positively, there needs to be some discomfort. So,
Yeah.
um, in regards to our spiritual life and or material life, how do you find the balance between pushing yourself into that zone of discomfort so that you can grow, but
Hmm.
also not overdoing it so that you
Hmm.
don't, you know, permanently hurt yourself?
Yeah. That's awesome. So if I understand your question properly, it's kind of like self self-help, self-care. It can sound almost like too um what's the word? It's almost like self-indulgent. It's like just feel good and just put all this stuff on you, and like the idea of discomfort is so against the idea of self-care. You know, it's like self-care, you're not supposed to feel bad. That's the whole point. Like you're supposed to treat yourself and go on a spa and spend lots of money and whatever. But like you're saying, sometimes real growth like needs discomfort, and that seems so anti self-care. So where does that come? That's such a good question. That's such a good question. I need to think about it for a second. um, yeah, I really feel like discomfort is the home of growth. Like you need discomfort in your life to move through things, but it's not very sellable. So no one's going to tell you do this, discomfort, because everyone wants to sell self-care. But it's true. I think real self-care, I mean, it's caring for the self, the atma, the soul, and that means stripping away all those anarthas, all those bad habits, and that's totally uncomfortable. I think that's part of the process, but if we're not there yet, it's okay. That's just what's coming to mind for me. It's like I think that's like the essence of what we would want to do, especially in a spiritual perspective. To care for ourselves is nourishing ourselves, but it's also removing those unwanted habits. Um, but if you're not there yet, and you can't even really want to confront that stuff, um, then it's helpful to, I guess, pour. I see this analogy. I don't know how true this is, but I just see this analogy when you like pour a cup of like juice or whatever in a bottle, you pour it and automatically the bad stuff comes out. So that's what comes to mind for me. I don't know if that's accurate, but it's like say, okay, self-care is what nourishes you? Going to kirtan, singing with the deities, being with the devotees. We're not even telling you you have to uproot all your anarthas, like someone might run away from that. But maybe just starting there to just pour what's good into your bucket will automatically, the bad stuff will come to the top and leak out. So that's what comes to mind for me. And I just imagine like the devotees in the early days would say like chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Like that process, there is so much stuff in between chanting Hare Krishna and being happy. But we might not say that immediately, but that will kind of happen through the process of just pouring the mantra in. So that's what I think of when we're saying self-care. Like you can care for yourself, you can nourish yourself by chanting, by hearing, by being around like-minded devotees, without like having to first confront all the dark stuff in you. Maybe that will come up in the process itself. Like it'll come up automatically and be part of the process. So that's my answer. If you have any more thoughts about it, though, it's a great
Oh,
question
that's a
and
great,
point of
great
conversation.
answer. I like it.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
So our next question is, could you talk a bit about building self-esteem?
Yeah, building self-esteem. Oh man. Okay, first of all, I don't want anyone to think I'm like this self-help guru, like who knows all these answers. I'm just doing the best I can. Part of me feels a little, I'm getting that fraud syndrome of like, yeah, this is how you build up your self-esteem. It's like, I got a lot of work to do, but let's just see what's coming up naturally. How to build up self-esteem. Um, hmm. A lot of it comes to identity, like who are we really? Who is that self we want to build up? If we don't really have a strong sense of identity, then I feel like our self-esteem is naturally low because we're thinking, okay, I'm this, 17-year-old girl in high school doing this, and this is what will make people happy, and this is what will make me the self-image that I have. Um, but I feel like that self-image is really flimsy because it's based off other people's perceptions. So I think building a strong sense of self, which really comes with time, like it's natural when you're a high schooler, when you're a teenager, to really just be navigating, who am I? Am I even a devotee? Am I a jock? Am I an artist? Am I this? Am I Indian? Like, I'm Indian, but I'm born in America. Identity crisis. Like, there's a lot going on there. So be gentle with yourself is what I want to say. Like, if you're figuring out still your self-esteem, you feel like you don't have such a strong self-esteem, that's totally understandable. I mean, some of the most confident people on the outside are crumbling on the inside. So that's totally there. Be gentle with yourself, but just know that with time, you're developing your personality, you're developing, you're getting a stronger sense of identity of who am I in this world. And that comes from just living. It comes from everything. Like, it's kind of cool to step back and say, like, all my experiences in this life have created who I am today. Meaning that all the heartbreaks, all the failures, all the confusions, you know, like, everything in my family, that's kind of cool to be able to own that. So I think when you're able to, like, own your full identity of who you are and all the traumas that came with it, all the confusions, all the beautiful things, you start gaining a strong sense of self, and that helps you have a strong self-esteem. But when we're pushing that stuff away, when we can't embrace that I'm Indian born in America, that I'm a Hare Krishna kid, that I grew up in a cult, like whatever stories we have about who we are, when we deny that, we have a really weak sense of self and a weaker sense of self-confidence. But the more we're able to embrace what makes us special and embrace who we are, then it becomes stronger. And so understanding our stories that we tell ourselves that usually would think make us weird and different, like, I'm a Hare Krishna, I go to the temple on Sundays, I don't want anyone to know, like, I've been there. But I do think that that's what makes us different, makes us unique, makes us strong in who we are. So just embracing who you are, embracing your stories, accepting it, and really cherishing it, that's the beginning of setting up a strong sense of self.
Nice. Okay, so in the chat, there was a question and they asked, how do you define maturity? Feel free to elaborate as you'd like.
That's such a good question. Okay, again, I'm stealing this from Rasanath. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. And this book he always quotes, Falling Upwards by Richard Rohr. If anyone's interested, I can type it out. You can Google it. I've read parts and bits of it, and it's super deep, but really amazing. And again, the whole point of the book is spiritual maturity. And he defines maturity as being able to embrace, as being able to hold opposites. And I love this topic. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. It means maturity is seeing the dualities in life. It's seeing that right now in life, I can be both grateful and fearful. I can be both grieving and I can be both joyous in its own weird way. It might sound counterintuitive, but it's possible. Like when COVID hit, there was fear. There was a lot of scariness, what's happening, uncertainty, but there was a lot of gratitude. Like, I'm with my family. I get to finally, like, have time off. I get to just be. I get to make art, and, like, can do that all day if I want. So for me, that was an example of holding opposites. If anyone else, oh, thank you, Aditi. If anyone else has opposites they're holding in their life, type it in the comments. Like, it's really fascinating what people are going through. And it's really empowering to be able to note the opposites that you're feeling. Like, people can be going through loss. They could, you know, like one of their family members had COVID or something else. There's like real grief and depression there, but yet there could be still some weird sense of relief and joy. And then it's just weird. Like, how do I explain to someone I'm so heartbroken, but like kind of relieved that happened? It's like, these are things we don't talk about, and that feel really take out a lot of guilt, and it's just weird to navigate. But being able to hold those opposites is the beginning of maturity. It's the beginning of saying, like, okay, you know, like, even in a spiritual institution, like, okay, how I feel about ISKCON. I love it. I grew up in it. Wonderful things. Oh my God, there's so many disappointments in it. There's so many things I feel embarrassed about. Like, being able to be okay holding both. So often we see black and white thinking, like it's either good or it's bad. I feel like that's immaturity. Like, okay, ISKCON, it's the best. It's the only way. It's this. Or I hate it. That person made a mistake. I'm over it. That's not really maturity, which, like, the world is so complex. It's so gray. There's infinite shades of gray, that being able to sit with that complexity is the beginning of maturity. And otherwise just saying, oh, I'm good or I'm bad. Like, it's either one or the other. explore the spectrum of complexity and be with that. That's kind of what I can say.
Yeah, I think obviously you can type in the chat if you have like a follow-up question to that, and we'll get to it next. But the next question was, I'm going to college next year and I have a fear of my future and who I am. What do I do to help myself with this uncertainty and fear of what I don't know?
Yeah, so true. Anytime we start a new chapter of life, it's always scary. It's interesting, like, yeah, when we're younger, we think like, okay, going to school and all these things are all new and scary. And we think at one point we'll like figure it out and life will stop being scary, but it like doesn't. Not to like heighten your anxiety. Then we get married, find the right partner, then we have kids, and then we have to take care of the kids and figure out our own life. And then by the time we're like in our 40s and 50s, you know, it's just, anyway, painting a picture that in life, those uncertainties keep coming up. But that being said, it's super valid of your own uncertainties of going to college. That's a real life change and something big. I think the question said how to navigate the uncertainty or how to understand it. I guess it comes back to that earlier question that it's really, instead of resisting and pushing against something and wanting that feeling to go away, you start softening and start accepting that this is just what it is. It sounds abstract and it sounds kind of, I don't know if this is even like annoying, like stop saying softening, stop saying these abstract words, but really, really that process of accepting, it's spiritual process, it's surrendering to Krishna. So in an abstract way, it can be like, just accept that, you know, just try not to resist so much. It's hard, easier said than done. In a spiritual way, I think we can see uncertainty as our friend a little bit. Like all these uncomfortable emotions, we're so used to seeing them as bad. But again, if we can see Krishna as that uncertainty, he is time, he's uncertainty, he knows everything and we don't. And just accepting that simple fact is really reassuring. And trying to make friends with uncertainty, with Krishna. And that sounds weird and abstract, but there's very concrete ways to do it. You could start a prayer journal. You could like say, dear uncertainty, dear Krishna, this is tripping me out. This is hard. I'm scared. This is just my honest feelings. And that's a great way to pray, is just being honest. And that's a way of engaging, of developing this personal relationship with Krishna. And after a while, you start feeling like, Krishna, you're my friend and you are uncertainty. And the whole world is in an uncertain place right now. But I want to see you behind that. And I think when you start doing that, like, that's awesome. Like Krishna will feel so loved. He will reciprocate. He will help you feel less uncertain, or he'll help you feel courageous. Maybe he won't make the uncertainty go away, but it'll be an opportunity to be courageous in that uncertainty.
Yeah, I think that answers their question. But obviously, if you have any more, you can always ask them in the chat or on the forum. But the next one is, what do you do if you're having doubts in your own faith, like not connecting with chanting or having association at temples? And how do you see Krishna as your best supporter in these times where you don't feel any connection? Can you elaborate on finding Krishna as a friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. What do you do when you're feeling doubt and you don't feel like Krishna is your well-wisher? Again, I'm going to answer as best as I can, but because it's kind of a general question, if there was more specificity behind what this person is going through and everything, that would be more helpful. Yeah, it's hard when that faith is not very strong, and maybe there's legitimate reasons that, hey, like I've been burnt in the past, this whole faith thing, like I don't feel comfortable just saying Krishna's my best friend and just close my eyes and go with it. My faith isn't so strong. I mean, the first thing we hear is to be around those who have faith, and that does help in one sense, to surround yourself with the Sangha, and see how Krishna is playing out in their lives is also really helpful. Just hearing stories about how people are taken care of, how they feel Krishna's presence in their life really helps. With developing a personal relationship with Krishna and trying to see him as your friend, I mean, it's as simple as like, what would you do with a friend? You would call them once in a while. You would tell them how they're doing, how you're doing. You would ask how they're doing. I mean, it's so interesting. It's just being personal with God, which could feel so weird because we don't really have a personal conception of God. We feel like, I don't know, for me at least, like I say Krishna, my friend, whatever, but I still see like, it's like this abstract idea, I haven't really developed that. It's because it's hard. But just start with some tangible practices. I can say like, connect through kirtan or japa, those are ways, but if that's not where you're at and you don't feel like a special attraction to that, there's other ways to connect. For me, I really just the act of like writing a little letter is so interesting, and that could really help. Prayer, just having a moment to yourself in front of the deities or a picture. Prayer could feel foreign when you don't feel like you have faith, but in that moment, it's a way to connect more personally. And then also I would say, like, don't be down on yourself for having doubts in your faith. Like, that's part of the process, and maybe you're just exploring something, and this is good. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I must believe like they believe. Just be like really what's the word, authentic to yourself right now and what you're feeling and going through. If your heart is telling you to explore other things, like pick up a book on Buddhism. To be honest, I'm reading something on Buddhism right now, and it's kind of cool. But like, I'm just saying, it's good to connect with Krishna as a friend, but if you're just feeling resistance to that, try to explore why am I feeling resistance in my faith? What could be helpful? Talk to a friend, research other faith traditions, look up podcasts. There's really cool information. There's really inspiring things out there that aren't directly maybe connected with our tradition, but can really give us a sense of faith and understanding. And I went on a little tangent, but I guess what I'm saying is just be authentic to why you're feeling that, and be okay exploring, be okay doubting, and definitely be okay asking questions, because part of faith is asking questions. Pretending that we have the answers isn't going to help.
I think Mukunda added on to that by saying you were born a devotee, but when / how did you choose to be a devotee yourself? Yeah,
that's a great question. I guess everyone has that moment where they really choose to practice more. And I guess that'll be like that for everyone. Like, everyone will have that coming to Krishna moment. All of us, I don't know if all of us here have grown up as devotees, maybe the majority. And part of it is our culture, and that's why we're connected to TSI, and part of it is our own curiosity and wanting to go deeper. For me, it's interesting. I didn't have like a real direct coming to Krishna moment or like even a dramatic kind of instance in my life or anything really clear. I know a lot of friends who kind of went into Maya. They had their partying moments, they did their thing, and then they really came back, and it's like really beautiful to see that happen. I think for me, it was like more gentle. Like, I've always just been very involved in the Lachua community. My parents were devotees and things like that. But I think for me, the moment it happened where I really stepped into it, I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I really stepped into it, was when I went on the bus tours that we have here in Alachua with Manaram and Jai Radhe. And for me, they just really built me as a person, because it's you get you and all your peers and people who are devotees, and you have your own Krishna conscious experience outside of your community, outside of your parents, and you can be the devotee that you want in a way. Because when you grow up in a community, you're kind of bound by how people perceive you. But when you're able to take a trip somewhere and do something different, you start like really saying like, oh, this is what my faith teaches. Like how much do I want to participate in that? So I would say those bus tours were really formative for me. I went on one when I was like 18. It was like I was just such a shy little girl. Like I knew like 4 people, like 4 devotee friends. I thought I was the most awkward, lame person in history. Like, I went on this bus tour. I remember like Bali was there, and Kish and Danya, and I was just like, oh, these girl coolies are so cool. Like, I'll never be like them. Just like this ocean of insecurity washed over me, because it was the first time I was in an environment like that. But again, it was like that place of discomfort. I was so uncomfortable. I say it like it was inspiring, but at first discomfort came majorly. I was insecure about how I looked. I was insecure about who I was. I felt like I couldn't sing or do kirtan or anything else that was valued. It was just very confronting, but at the same time, it was a huge adventure. Like we went to Mexico, we were doing Harinam in the street. It was such a find yourself moment. And those are just really valuable. Like, again, getting out of your comfort zone and then like finding what does being a devotee mean to me? And I remember I came home like after the bus tour and I just felt like, whoa, like the world is bigger than I thought. And that was the beginning, I feel like, of me growing up. I would really say the first 18 years of my life, I was super sheltered. And after that, I went on like every single bus tour for 5 to 6 years. And I just grew a lot because every bus tour, those bus tours are a good example of growth because it's both super fun and super uncomfortable. Like you're stuck on a bus with so many kids. There becomes that hierarchy of the cool kids and not cool kids, kind of, and like relationships and love and all this stuff happens and like adventures, and it's a whole microcosm. It's awesome. It's so awesome because you grow like anything, but you're totally confronted. Again, I remember those early bus tours. I felt like such a dork. I felt so unlovable. I felt so like a misfit. I felt so shy and useless. I mean, I can go down the list, and I laugh about it now because I feel really grateful. I've grown a lot since then, but it came from putting myself in a situation like that. And with that came so much good things. Like so many of my best friends came from those bus tours, like meeting so many people from all over. Super grateful for that. So that was like my coming to Krishna moment.
Yeah, I think I had something similar where like once I stepped out of my own little bubble here in Seattle, I realized that like there are really cool people outside of where I'm from, and a lot of their like opinions matter. And then I also went on bus tour. It was really great, and things like TSI, and they just help you. They help like ground you and help you find your place.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah. And it kind of comes back to like forming an identity. Like we form good self-esteem and we form an identity when we do these things that are like out of our comfort zone and kind of nerve-wracking. But once we do it and we're on the other side, we're like, oh, that was easy. That was cool. And we just keep doing it, and it's exciting.
I guess it's kind of adding on to what you were talking about, but how do we find things that we're passionate about and balance that with other work? And what are tips we can use to find that passion?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's so much like also popular lingo, find your passion and you're nothing without your passion. And although it's kind of true to find your passion, sometimes it's, I feel like over signified, if that's a word, it's like overemphasized that like, you will never live a happy life unless you're doing your passion. Like your 9-to-5 job sucks. It's so sucking. Do something else, start a startup or whatever. But the truth is, like, it's really good to cultivate something that you're passionate about, but it can be a quiet passion. Like, I don't think it has to be this, like, leave everything you're doing, leave your job, leave your school, become that masterful mridanga player, become that artist, start this business. That can all come. But I think what's really important is to, like, cultivate a small flame and just let that grow. And that's more organic and natural. I would love to hear this person if they want to add on what they think their passion is. I guess I'll just give, to make it specific, I'll just give my own example. And then if anyone wants to add here, because this is also a great topic of finding your passion. My example is that I studied graphic design and arts already in school, and which was something already I was passionate about. But what you guys might know me from, which is doing the illustrations and everything about emotions, that was a small little flame that kept burning consistently now for 5 years. And I'm really grateful for that flame because I feel like it's led me in a place that I really want to be in, and it's helped me discover something I'm really passionate about. And I never thought I'd be really so passionate and interested in emotional wellness, but I guess I am. And it happened because I just started doing something small consistently. And I'm just like a very big proponent of doing little projects consistently. Even though I suck at consistency, somehow I've done these things called the 100-Day Project. And I love them because it's a way to commit to doing something daily. Even if it's not fully daily, just do a 30-day project, a 20-day project, whatever it is, do something small and be in that place of creative curiosity. And just keep it small. You don't have to show it off to everyone. You don't have to need 1 million followers or whatever. Just keep your passion small but consistent. And I don't know what that passion might be. It doesn't have to be something creative. It could be something else, or if you're interested in cooking, or if you're interested in and even like community development. I mean, there's so many things. Just try to make time and space for it, and always give it priority, even if it doesn't take the most time in your life. Like, you know, be gentle with yourself. You don't have to quit everything and just do your passion. Like, work or go to school and do your duty like we're told, but like keep that thing on the side going, and you'll be kind of amazed where it leads you if you keep letting it grow consistently.
Yeah, and I think this is like the last question we'll do. It's a little bit like lighter, but what tools do you use for your illustrations, and are there any free versions of those for students?
What tools do I use for my illustrations? Okay, cool. I just laughed because you said it's a little lighter, and I was like, oh crap, I was heavy the whole time. It's like I went too deep and too heavy. That's why no one's talking to me or showing me their cameras.
I think it was perfect.
Okay, I can answer that. What tools do I use? I guess they mean in my art. I have it here somewhere. One sec. Super, super simple tools. I use a sketchbook that I ordered off of Amazon for 15 bucks. And I use watercolors. Again, it's probably like no more than 12 or $15. And I just keep it as portable as possible. I have this cool paintbrush. It's like a water paintbrush, also like $8 on Amazon. Whatever pencil I can find. So I don't know, I'm a believer in using simple tools and portable tools that you can carry with you. The one expensive tool that I have though is an iPad. Oh, God, everything is in hand distance. This has been really cool. So for whoever's asking, I paint traditionally watercolor and sketchbook, and then I edit it on my iPad and Apple Pencil. So that's how I've been doing. But before that, for years, it was just a sketchbook, and I wouldn't even scan my drawings. I would just take photos of them and post on Instagram. So yeah.
Sweet. Thank you so much. We have like a few announcements, and then I think we'll wrap up. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so our announcements. Our other recordings, if you want to hear like past speakers, are on our website, sangainitiative.org. And our next speaker is Coach Rukmini Poddar. She's speaking with us next Tuesday about how to sustain long-term relationships. And any other information you want will be on our social media or some website. And the cool little guy that's actually pouring the paint all over our social media is a drawing by Rukmini. So you can follow her at rockandrikshi on Instagram. She's really great. And if you have any questions or want to elaborate on your questions that you asked today, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them if you give her a DM.
Totally. And please, someone just show me your face. Just joking. I feel like there's friends here, but no one's talking to me and no one's showing their face, and I'm just alone. And I don't even know if anyone liked what I said. This is me being like a validation queen. Tell me that was okay. But no, but really, oh, Harini, so nice to see you. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't showing my face, but that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Aw, thanks. I'm like really just happy to be with you guys, and that was spontaneous but exciting, and hopefully it was helpful for everyone. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in person one day in the far future.
Yeah, again, thank you so much. This was really great. I feel like I learned a lot and gained a lot of insight and tips for the future. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
All right.
Until next time.